Hi, I'm Earl White, real estate agent for Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm making a video today about the Earnest Money Deposit, and it's abbreviated as EMD. You'll hear that pretty often. Most people understand that if you make an offer and the seller accepts, you'll have to put a deposit down. That deposit will usually be held by the escrow or title company, an independent, neutral third party. We'll go into some specifics about how you could cancel the deal and expect to get your earnest money deposit back. But I'm really making this video because the number one misconception I get is from sellers. Sellers will often say to me, if they cancel the deal, I get the money, right? Not exactly. The number one thing to remember is the title company is an independent party, not on your side, not on their side, and to cover their own behind, they're going to make sure that both parties agree in writing before they send that money anywhere. So how much should the earnest deposit be? Well, there is no hard and fast rule, but the seller and the listing agent will disclose how much they'd like as an earnest deposit in the listing. That doesn't mean that you can't make an offer for less earnest money or even more earnest money. In my market, 1 to 2% is what's most common. So for a $400,000 house, it usually wouldn't be any less than $4,000, and it could be as much as about $10,000. This would be pretty common in my market. Now let's talk about some reasons that the buyer could back out of the contract and expect all of their deposit back. The first and the biggest is usually due diligence period. Now, in my market, what is most common is anywhere as low as 7 days and as much as 12 days. This is what's common in the Vegas Valley. Due diligence period is synonymous with the inspection period, but really it's a time for you to look into school districts or crime rates, anything that's important to you. Due diligence is your most blanket cover-all reason to back out of the contract, and if you do during that period, you should expect to get all of your money back. There are some other contingencies that are related to your loan if it's not a cash deal, like an appraisal contingency and a loan contingency. Appraisal contingency is simple. If the property doesn't appraise for full value, you can either back out or you can renegotiate terms. If you can't get the loan during the period of your loan contingency, there's a problem with your loan, well then you would also have grounds for trying to back out and get your deposit back. After that, there is one more period for HOA document review. So in my state, when you are purchasing a property in an HOA, you get a copy of the HOA documents and you get 5 days to review them. If you were to cancel in that 5-day period, then by law, you would be entitled to get your earnest deposit back. All right, now let's get down to business. Let's say that all of those contingencies have been exhausted and the buyer decides to back out anyways. Well, I wish I could tell you, Mr. Seller, that it was going to be as straightforward as we notify the title company, hey, all of their contingencies are over and they've backed out, go ahead and send me that EMD deposit, right? Unfortunately, like we referenced early on, that title company is not only neutral, but they also want to protect themselves. And they're not going to send that money anywhere unless both parties agree. So it is very rare in my experience that both parties ever agree to the seller getting all of the money or the buyer getting all of the money back. Usually, once we're in a dispute and it's past the contingency period, what I see most often happening is both parties come to the realization, well, you're never going to sign paperwork that says I get everything and you get nothing, and they start to negotiate for middle ground. In conclusion, if the buyer's backing out over one of the contingencies that is in the contract during the appropriate period, the seller really should be releasing that earnest money deposit back to him. If the buyer is backing out after that period, then the seller can usually say, hey, I have definitely been damaged. I have been making plans based on the contract terms. But I rarely see the seller getting more than half of the earnest money deposit because it requires both signatures to go anywhere.